Hi, I'm Derek Ashong, and you are now in the stream. We are a social media community with a daily TV show right here on Al Jazeera English. We source our stories directly from you, our audience, and this program is live, so definitely send us your thoughts on things you want to see covered here. Today, youth in Senegal say they do not want a third term for their president and that enough is enough. And freedom of expression in Saudi Arabia. Is a proposed counterterrorism law a threat to peaceful protest in the country? As always, our digital producer, Ahmed Shihab El-Din, is here with us looking out for your live feedback. And on the couch with us today for the second day is Dalia Ziada. She's an Egyptian blogger, author, and writer. And she's here in Washington, D.C. for a brief time. Dalia, tell us a little bit about the difference between what you've been hearing from people in D.C. about the revolution in Egypt and what are the aspirations of people back home.
I had the pleasure in this visit to meet with several officials here and also several NGOs, and I came up with the sense that people here are perceiving Egypt or the future of Egypt in a very wrong way. They are expecting Egypt to end up either in the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a radical or Islamist political group, or in the hands of the military. And thus, they want again to repeat the same mistakes because they are afraid of or scared from the Muslim Brotherhood to go and support the military, which is something actually we don't want to see happening again.
Well, it seems like they're choosing security over democracy.
The word that I hear from them all the time, the devil we know is better than the devil we don't know. I started to hate it, really, you know. That's not true. There is... Yeah. The world is not about devils. There are angels there in the streets, yes, fighting for democracy, fighting for freedom. Those are the ones that everyone in the world should be supporting to rebuild Egypt.
Ahmed, you grew up in Egypt. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, when you said the devil that we know is better than the one we don't know, it just made me think of Libya, actually, because we saw that, you know, the U.S. government is funding, giving arms to people on the ground that they are not entirely necessarily sure of who they are. So it's just made me think of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe sometime we'll get to a day when devils are not the only options. As always, we want to know what stories you're following, so definitely pitch us your story idea, send it to us in a brief video, and tweet it using the hashtag AJStream.
All right, I'm Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit, presently the head of marketing at Hitmonk and chief swine defender at Breadpig, and I am in the stream.
In Senegal, 85-year-old two-term President Abdoulaye Wade has attempted to extend his control in office by making amendments to the constitution. Citizens there have responded by taking to the streets of Dakar. Take a look at this video from protests just last Saturday, right there in the capital of Senegal. Now, one of the driving forces behind these protests is a youth movement that's known as Y'en a marre, or Enough is Enough. The group is protesting against power cuts, unemployment, and corruption. It's also been involved in getting young people to participate in the upcoming elections. The movement's leader is an activist and rapper named Omar Toure, who's also known as Tiat. He was detained earlier this week for making critical comments about President Wade. In addition to participating in recent protests, the music he makes is also politically charged. And I think it's worth taking a look. We've got a clip here, which you're going to have to read the subtitles, but it's worth doing so. This is Tiat. Now, Omar was released Tuesday night and is now joining us live via Skype from Dakar. Thiat, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you for you aussi.
So tell us first, why were you arrested?
Yes, I was arrested because of a speech I made on July 23rd during a meeting of the civil society. I said in this speech that the elderly person who tell lies is not a role model for our society. This is why I was arrested.
Okay, and how is this something that is common for people for them to have that kind of response to this sort of protest?
Yes, but I think right now in Senegal we have a new context, political context, because it's the first time we've seen or we see young people moving and try to understand what's going on in their country, and it's very difficult for what the actual president to understand how it is, what's the problem, why right now young people stand up and say no, it's enough for everything like corruption, for everything like bad political or dilapidation of the money of this country.
Explain
And
that to us. Why is it that now the young people have stood up? Why now?
because we fed up. We fed up because every time we seen the president who use money for things that don't interesting people don't interesting population. His son tried to buy private jet, and his daughter going to do some rally Paris Dakar, and people live in inundation, and people are suffering. People are poor. Are poor. We don't understand why. We don't understand what is the problem of this president. He don't respect the people of Senegal. He don't make sense of our life.
You know,
yeah.
Dalia, I mean,
Actually, I feel like I'm living in a déjà vu status now.
Yes.
All what you're saying has actually been said amongst our groups in Egypt. You know, it's all. I think Senegal now is ripe for a change, and you will win, guys. When there exists a gap between the ruler and the people, not only age gap or educational gap, but also between, if he cannot understand what they are really feeling, what they want, and refuses to listen, at that time, no, you are doing the right thing and you will win.
Yes. You know, I can explain something about politics in Senegal, because for the past 5 years, the democracy is getting weaker and weaker. But we've seen newspapers, headquarters being burning down, journalists being arrested, some of them brutalized, and also the president is acting like his son, excuse me, his son trying to put his son on the chair after he left, and also the opposition didn't even enroll for the election of deputy. But this is the context we create Yanamar. Everything is bad in our country now.
Yeah.
We have, yeah.
I just want to ask you about that. You said you created Yanamar for this, and we see on Facebook there's almost 10,000 people who like the page, and we have a question coming in for you asking, what is the opposition like, if you could speak to it a bit, and does Yanamar support any other candidates?
Yanamar don't have candidates because Yanamar is a movement, a political, like it's pacific and volunteer. It's just for engagement for people who want to change their mentality. Because now we initiate the NTS, the new type of Senegalese. We don't need politicians to change our mind. We don't need politicians to rule our society. We just need a new type of Senegalese people. Some people who want to wake up and to change their mind, to change their society, to don't accept the corruption, to don't accept things, but like what we saw on the street every day in Senegal, a policeman on the careful and say to the taxi, give me 1,000. Because the taximan don't get really paper. It's not normal. And we say to people, we fed up to things like that. Enough is enough. We're going to change our mind. Why African people don't try to understand what's going on? Why? I wonder what's going on. Why every kind of continent, like Europe or America or sometimes on Mayan Orient, try to go to develop their country, their society, their politics, their economy. And in Africa, you got many riches. You got
Well, you know, it seems that this point that you're raising is felt by a lot of people. You just mentioned Moyen-Orient, the Middle East.
His passion is so impressive, actually, to me. And I think, yeah, again, you are doing the right thing. But I would like to ask you some questions regarding your movement. I can see you are using very creative ways to express yourselves, like the hip-hop music, for example, which, in my opinion, is going to be very, very influential. Is it a tactic that you have developed from the beginnings that we like? Have you heard about nonviolent tactics and strategies? Was it a tactic for you to use, or it just happened by luck? Like people were just fed up, so they decided to sing. What happened exactly that made you use hip-hop music in advocating your cause?
Yes, we use it hip hop because in Senegal people say every day, all the time, hip hop is the only music you're gonna have a message. Every people in Senegal respect the hip hop music because the hip hoppers have a consciously lyrical, and we don't do a lot entertainment. Every time we do entertainment, and people respect people who do hip hop here.
Let me ask you one final question, Thiat. Do you believe that what's happening in Senegal could be the start of an African spring? Do you think this movement could spread across the continent?
Yes, I think so. I think our movement is a model for every kind of society in Africa and all around the world. I think so. I think so.
Thiat, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We know your picture's a bit dark because it's nighttime there. We can hear the prayer call. We're going to give you, let you go now, but thank you. We're playing your video right now live on television so people can see what kind of artistry you make. Thank you.
Thank you, the world.
Thanks.
It seems the sentiment is really, truly worldwide.
That's great. That's giving me so much hope that there's still people in the world who understand really what they are doing, and they are willing really to change this world to the better.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to read more about this particular story on Senegal, you can go to our website, stream.aljazeera.com. You're going to find more pictures, commentary, and many, many more stories, as well as the video that we just played you.
So there were some hashtags that we're following, but in today's feedback section, we have a story out of Lebanon that Twitter user Matsim65 asked us to look into. Now, Al Jazeera has already reported that Zaid Hamdan, this guy on my screen right here, a well-known Lebanese musician, was arrested on Wednesday for defaming Lebanese President Michel Suleiman in his single, General Suleiman. But he was later released in the day after an outcry from activists who responded to this Facebook message he posted after being arrested. "They are prosecuting me for defamation of President Suleiman," he wrote. "I don't know until when I'm staying in prison. Please mobilize." And they did mobilize. Now, the video in question I'm going to play for you right here is actually a video that brings to light and kind of uses politically charged lyrics to criticize Lebanon's political system for being focused around the clans, the religion, and the foreign influences on the country. But much of that conversation online highlights the fact that it was uploaded to YouTube 1 year ago. So that has a lot of people wondering why it has just recently caught the attention of Lebanese authorities. Now, we have one tweet that jokingly tweets and jabs at the Lebanese government, saying the Lebanese government opened Zaid's song on YouTube in August 2010. It finished buffering only today, using the hashtag Internet, which refers to this ongoing online campaign for affordable and decent internet speeds in Lebanon. Now, this is the website of the Internet campaign, and it's worth mentioning download speeds in Lebanon are said to be the slowest in the world, only second to Burkina Faso. And for years, the country has not had access to a large amount of international bandwidth. But interestingly enough, on Monday, the India, Middle East, and Western Europe internet switch, as it's being called, was finally flipped, giving Lebanon more bandwidth, and it looks like it came just in time for the singer Ziad Hamdan, who perhaps has used that faster internet connection to secure his own release. Although it's worth mentioning, officials said it will take several weeks for the increased speed to trickle down to its citizens.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I hate it when those YouTube videos are buffering like that, you know.
Yeah.
12 months is a long time. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, thank you, Ahmed, for
Yep.
that feedback. This is what people have been talking to us about right now today, so thank you for that update. Human rights groups say that a draft counterterrorism law in Saudi Arabia would actually grant harsher punishments and fewer legal rights for political dissenters. It would also grant the government greater surveillance powers. Critics say the law, which was leaked to Amnesty International last week, targets citizen protests rather than actual terror threats. On Twitter, people are not happy about this at all. Ahmed, what kind of stuff have they been saying?
We've seen tweets coming in from all over the world about this. Jay Rawson saying that when Amnesty International actually criticized, the Saudi government for their proposed terror laws, Saudi shut down access to their website. As you can see, this is an image that people and users got in Saudi Arabia when they were trying to go to Amnesty. But then we also see tweets, from London saying even the Saudi kingdom now knows the power of grassroots activism, and that Saudi terror law is a small sign of fear from people power. And then inside Saudi Arabia, we've seen tweets coming out from Nawara82 saying you control people with two things, religion and fear. And Saudi terror law ensures that Saudi has all its bases covered. And one last tweet criticizing the law says Saudi terror law is the true equalizer of Saudi society. We are all guilty until proven innocent.
Okay, so
funny.
there are obviously some really strong thoughts on this.
Yeah, actually, in a couple of years ago, in 2008, if I remember the date well, our government, the Egyptian government, wanted, or people were calling for ending the emergency status in the country. So the government came up with the idea of creating an anti-terrorism law. I think their definition of the word terrorism is about what terrorizes them as regimes, not about the general concept of terrorism, which we understand.
This is a perfect way to get into the next element, because I really want to get some insight into what is being defined as terrorism in this law. Joining us via Skype to discuss this is Dina El Mamoun. She's a researcher with Amnesty International who focuses on Saudi Arabia. Dina, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you.
Dina, tell us, what is defined as terrorism under this proposed Saudi law?
Well, actually, this is one of the problems, which is the definition is so broad and vague that it can include matters that relate to exercise of right to freedom of expression. For example, if you look at the definition in Article 1, you will find that it includes terms such as endangering the national unity, or halting the basic law of the country, or undermining the status of the country and its position and standing in the world. Now that is very vague and could extend to mean anything that would include a criticism of the country, of the kingdom, or of the policies of the government. And as such, we oppose this broad definition because we think it's not in line with international law.
Well, Dina, let me ask you a question, because Saudi Arabia has had some significant issues with terrorism. We all remember the Al-Khobar bombings back in 2004. I believe it killed 22 people. And we know that last year, I was just looking at an article on Bloomberg that said last year Saudi Arabia claimed to have prevented 220 terror attacks since they've begun their own internal conflict or battle against Al-Qaeda. So isn't there some legitimate concern for the Saudi government?
Well, what we say is that the Saudi government, and indeed other governments as well, not only have the right to legislate and take action in relation to terrorism and terrorist crimes, but they actually have a duty to do this. What is not allowed, however, and what is not permitted in international law is to use that as a tool to repress dissent. And this is part of the problem. The other problem is that even if you want to try to fight terrorism, you do that within the bounds of the law. For example, if you look at the law as it currently stands, the draft law, I should say, it doesn't give rights to detainees in terms of it allows detention without charge or trial for prolonged periods. It allows for incommunicado detention. Basically, the authorities can decide not to allow you to contact your family or lawyer. So even if there is someone who is a suspect in a terrorist crime, that person should still have those rights.
Well, Dina, our audience has had a lot to say about this. Let's see some of what they've been talking about again on Twitter.
Yeah, Dina, we see from M. Kashif, he's saying, I'm more concerned about the U.S. Patriot Act rather than the Saudi terror law. So that's just an example of another government that, to a certain extent, has used terrorism to perhaps, inadvertently curtail on civil liberties. Now, the reason I bring that up is because with the Saudi example, we see Nawara saying her biggest concern is the ambiguity of what constitutes terrorism, which you touched on, and she says it's the concentration of judicial power with one entity, the Ministry of Interior.
Let me ask you a question then on that point, Dina. So you have the Patriot Law has been enacted in the United States for almost a decade now. You don't see people, falling down in the streets about their inability to protest. Perhaps the Saudi law, is it comparable?
No, actually, we in Amnesty International, we have also criticized the Patriot Act as well as other acts that have been and laws that have been drafted across the Middle East region in relation to countering terrorism. And we do those for different grounds. As far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, we have three main grounds. One of them is the broad definition. The second one is the rights of detainees. And the third one is the unfettered authority given to the Ministry of Interior to take whatever action it deems necessary to protect internal security without any judicial supervision or oversight.
Dalia?
Also, the timing of issuing this law or wanting to issue this law makes us very suspicious about why they want to do it now. You have mentioned several terrorist incidents that happened over the past years. Why they didn't issue the anti-terrorism law at that time? It was mostly needed, but now it's not needed. This brings us again to the fact that they only care for what terrorizes them as regimes, and not what really is terrorism.
Do you think that this, actually back to you, Dina, on this, do you think that this kind of law could set an example for other countries in the GCC?
Well, we do know that, for example, the GCC Convention on Fighting Terrorism is also defines terrorism in very broad terms, and we've also criticized that. And on the basis of that, some of the GCC countries have brought in laws that are also not in line with international law, and we've condemned those. But certainly, the Saudi Arabia law is one of the examples that we have seen where really the type of possibility for violations from the side of the authority are huge.
Dina, I'm curious what you might say about the perception of Saudi Arabia, not just the government, but the people living inside of the country. Obviously, lots of eyes are focused on the Middle East. We have Nawara82 saying the world already thinks that every Saudi is a terrorist and treats us as such. Thank you, Saudi terror law, attributing, the Saudi terror law for validating their suspicions. Is there a risk there?
Well, I think the problem is we know that Saudi Arabia has always taken these steps against critics, and what this law does is on the ground that it sort of consolidates the ongoing practice anyway. Whether or not that would then have an impact on how Saudis are perceived from external actors, that is something that remains to be seen. But certainly, as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, it's never tolerated any critics and dealt with them quite harshly. I mean, protests are banned in Saudi Arabia. But despite this, we have seen people protesting. Now, the problem is now the people, if they do protest again, they will find themselves facing a terrorist crime. And once they do that, then life will become very difficult for them because, they will then be labeled a terrorist, not only inside Arabia, but also outside.
Well, we are a social media show, and we have a tweet from Amnesty saying Saudi Arabia may have blocked amnesty.org's site, but people can still access our Arabic statement on Amnesty UK, and so on and so forth. We see that you've been very active in trying to draw attention to this. How has social media changed the way in which you go about this?
Okay, just before I answer that, I'm very glad you raised that point, because actually we have learned from our contacts in Saudi Arabia and activists that our website has been unblocked and now people can actually view our website and will have access to it. And what we now
I'm sorry, on that note, Dina, I want to ask you to pause. We're going to take you into the post show so you can finish your point. Thanks very much for joining us. Dalia, thank you for being us as well, and thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for joining us, and you can continue this conversation with us on our website, stream.aljazeera.com. Remember, you can be a part of this conversation using the hashtag AJStream. You may find your tweets live on the air. We're about to go online. We will see you there.